Morning, all of you. So, if it comes to here, in last class we studied components of an ecosystem and as well as functioning of an ecosystem. Is it yes or no? So, if we take all the organisms in this earth, we can classifying into three categories. One is what? Producers, which we already studied in the last class. Now, in our today's class, we will see consumers and its types, and as well as the third kind of one that is only we used to called as decomposers. So these are the three classification of organisms in the earth. So as we all know that producers means what? They are the primary source of production of food. So with the help of sunlight, under the presence of sunlight, with the help of chlorophyll, they used to produce organic substances from the inorganic substances. What is the inorganic substances, guys? That inorganic substances is what? CO2 plus water. So they used to make organic substances like carbohydrates. That is only we used to call as photosynthesis. Is it yes or no, guys? Please respond. And also it will make fats and as well as proteins also. So that is what producers wish to say. So producers means which they use to make food. Primarily, they will synthesize the food by their own. They are called as producers. So what is the example of producers which you studied, guys? What is the
green plant?
Green plants. Green plants are called producers in this living world. Is it yes or no? So now if it comes to here, every food in this earth for us, our animals, for any other thing, non-green plants, everything, it is manufactured by green plants. That is why we used to say producers also we used to call it as what, guys? We used to call it as autotrophic, or we can say self-feeder organisms. Is it yes or no? Self-feeder organisms we used to call it as. So till here I used to taught you in the last class. Now coming to here, consumers. So in our class we're going to study what is consumers and the types of consumers and all in detail. So now if you'll notice it, consumers. So the name itself is representing the definition. So what do you mean by consumers, guys? Anybody can say? So consumers means, remember, the organism which consumes food, or we can say simply, which eat food, that is only we used to call it as which eat food. Prepared by whom, guys? Which food we will eat, guys? Prepared by which eat food?
Producers.
Prepared by producers. That is what? Understanding? By producers. That is only we used to call it as consumers. So whatever the organisms, the consumers, they always depends on producers for food directly or indirectly. So we all know that all the animals are what? All the animals are consumers, including the human beings, and even a microscopic animals like which is living in the water, like protozoa, amoeba, paramecium. These all are also, we used to say, everything consumers only, because they cannot synthesize their own food. They always go with the they like directly or indirectly they used to depend on the producers or green plants to seek the food. So that is why they are all called as consumers. So now these consumers will be directly depending on the plants, or else green plants called as producers are indirectly depend on it. So the animals, those will eat grass or other products of the plants, then we used to say they are depending on directly. Is it yes or no, guys? Please respond. So those animals which are directly consuming the producers or the products of producers, there we can say that they are directly depending on the consumers. Now, which only will eat non-vegetarians, that is what we will say. The animals which will eat The animals which will eat only meat, understanding? That is only what we used to call, guys. What we used to call, they are directly or indirectly depending on. So only they will eat of the food. Another animal which will eat grass and all, like suppose if we'll take lion will eat cow, goat, and etc. etc. So that is what we used to call as those animals which will eat meat, means the other animals. Then we can say that they are depending on the producers indirectly. Is it yes, sir? So now if it comes to here, for example, if you take like human beings is the best one. We people is directly or indirectly? Human beings are directly or indirectly? Please respond.
Indirectly, sir.
Indirectly? Is it not directly? Are you, Arvind, are you not eating kira and all, that leaves and all, fruits, everything? That is. So, like human beings, particularly, we people sometimes will directly involve and sometimes indirectly, understand? So sometimes we'll eat the directly products of the plants, and sometimes indirectly, like chicken and all, if you are eating, you are indirectly depending on the producers. If you are eating the plants, fruits, leaves, and etc., etc., you are directly depending on the plants or producers. So these kind of organisms we used to call, like they are both under the directly and as well as under the indirectly, they used to depend on producers. So based upon this only, these consumers, they are, as we know, what is another name of consumers? Anybody can tell me? Consumers are also we can call it as what?
Heterotrophs.
Heterotrophs, understanding? So that is why these consumers, based upon directly or indirectly, or both the methods, we are classifying into three things. Consumers can be divided into three groups. That is only the first group, which is called as herbivores, and the second one, which we used to call as carnivores, and the third one, which we used to call as, what we used to call, guys? Omnivores, understand, or omnivores, whatever it is. So herbivores means, remember, which are directly depend on producers. Understanding, Ra? Directly depend on whom, Ra? Directly depend on producers. So that is only we used to call as herbivores. Indirectly depends on producers. So they are only called as consumers. Next, both directly and both directly and indirectly depending on producers. Then we used to call as, what we used to call, we used to call as omnivores. Omnivores, your choice. So this is what the classification of consumers. Now please call your friends, everyone, try to just make them call. So now if you notice it, this is what we used to call as consumers. So consumers are three types based upon how we are making, guys, based upon the dependent or independent on the, indirectly or directly on the producers. So now, as we know, the producers are the primary source of energy or food, which they will synthesize there by the process of photosynthesis. Now, if we'll take the herbivores, let us discuss in detail. So herbivores means, so you might be noticing, so whatever the animals, only they will eat plants. Do you understand, everybody? Eat only plants or the products of plants. Products of plants. So those animals we used to call it as what, guys? Herbivores. So if you take, the herbivores may eat like directly plants. For example, if you take, the animals are eating only grass, only leaves, only grains, only fruits, understanding, or the husk or the bark of the trees, understanding, a bark of the trees, etc., whatever it is, you can notice it. This all the things if you'll see, everything is a product of plant or it is a plant. So these are we used to called as herbivores. So now let me see, everybody try to give one example of the herbivorous animal which you people knows. Krutika, Sutir, whatever it is, you please try to give. Let me see, let us make 10 examples. Anybody? Let us know what is your knowledge. Let us check it. So give the examples of herbivores. First of all, starts with our house. So we know cow. Cow is the herbivorous. Next one, we know that buffalo. Next one, tell me, what is the animals you know that which is only herbivores? Sheep, horse, deer. Yes, please. Others, goat. Very good, Tarani. Others don't know. Others at least don't know that animals also. Camel, ash, ox. We can say elephant, monkey, squirrel. You can make rabbit and you can take even etc. Even hippopotamus, you might be notice it. Water horse, etc. All the things are herbivorous only. So now, if you take the well-known thing, cow. Cow you are used to see in our surroundings and all. So why we used to call it as herbivorous, Arvind? Please.
Cow is a plant eater, sir.
Yes. So it will eat plants or the products of plants. So that is why it is called as, what we used to call it, herbivores, because it will eat only the plant or the plant product. So if we take all these herbivores, we used to call it as, also simply we can say herbivores or we can say herbivorous animals. So these animals, they will get their food by eating the producers. That is what you need to remember. So all the herbivorous animals, understand, they will get the food by eating what? Eating the producers. Directly they used to eat the producers or the products of food, products of producers. So that is why we used to call these herbivores. They are the first one who will eat the plants directly. That is why we used to call them as primary consumers. What we used to call, this is the very important one. So we used to call them what, guys? Primary consumers. Understand? So these herbivores, like everything, cattle, deer, goat, etc., all the animals, camel, ass, ox, elephant, giraffe, all the things, they all will come under what, guys? Primary consumers. So why we used to call them as primary consumers? Because they are directly depending on plants and the products of the plants. That is why we used to call them as primary consumers. That's all. Okay. Please inform your friends. That is what we have to remember it. So this is only what we used to call it as herbivores. Understand, Varsini? So now if we take here, so directly depending on, we used to call it as herbivores. Now, those who are not depending on directly, those who are indirectly depending on, that is what we used to call it as. What we used to call it, guys? Carnivores. Yes or no? So those animals eat only other animals. That is what. So if we take, for example, some animals eat only other animals. So other animals means it may be humans also included. You might be notice it. Some animals will kill the humans also and they will consume. So that is what I'm saying. So those animals eat only other animals, who is to called as carnivores. So these, they do not touch the producers. Understand? So they do not even they do not even smell the producers because they are completely non-veg Understanding means only they will sustain by eating meat, means other animals as food. So that is what we used to call as carnivores. So they do not eat plant food at all. So that is what we used to call as carnivores. So you can say the definitions. Those animals which eat only other animals as food are called, what will it call, guys? Carnivores. Okay, so now these carnivores, they will eat only what it is, guys, either meat or we used to say flesh, okay, of the animals. So that is why we can also say that those animals eat only the meat of other animals, or we can say that carnivores. So now some of the examples of carnivores, if we'll take, anybody can give examples, please. One is
Lion.
also in our home also you might be find one carnivorous, which is you might be notice it. You might be not even think it is a carnivore till now. It is in our surroundings. It is on the walls itself. Anybody? Please, Humaira. Yeah, please tell me what is a carnivorous animal you people know. The first one is lion. We know that tiger. We know that next one. Yeah, tell me. You can take wolf or fox. Next. Yeah, please. You known animal, tell me. Snake, you can take. And even hyena or dogs, like wild dogs. Hawk. Please
Cheetah.
respond. Yeah, cheetah, etc., etc. Now, the known two things I will say you in our surroundings. See, you will be surprising. You might be not noticed it. How many of you know frog? Frog is also a carnivores. Understanding, and as well as in our home, do you have a lizard? Lizard is also a carnivorous, and as well as kingfisher, a bird, that is also a carnivorous. So these all the things, if we'll take. Sir, lizard, you might be notice it. It will eat only the mosquitoes and other small beetles. Have you noticed it? Frog also the same thing. It will eat only mosquitoes or flies or some other things, and it will survive only by consuming non-veg. So snake also same thing, meat or flesh of other animals. So if we'll take here lion and all. Lion, what is the animals it will eat? Lion is the carnivorous because it will eat deer, rabbit, goat, elephant, giraffe, all the animals will be eaten by the lion. So that is why we used to call it as, what we used to call it? The carnivorous animal. So lion, tiger, fox, all the things we used to call it as carnivorous animals. So that is why they are not depend directly on the producers, they are indirectly depending on the producers. That is why we used to say that, what we used to call this one, guys, they are the territory consumers, or we used to say secondary consumers. They are indirectly the large carnivores which feed upon the small carnivores. You can take here, they all we used to call it as like a small carnivores which feed on the herbivores. So they are called as secondary consumers. Understand, everyone? So this, remember, again we will make this carnivores two types. That is what? One is small carnivores and another one is large carnivores. So please all of you note it down. So carnivores are two types. What is that? One is small carnivores and another one is large carnivores. So now if we take the small carnivores, which will feed on herbivores, that is what we used to call it as. That is what we used to call it as primary, secondary consumers. For example, like frog, lizard, bird, and fox, etc. They all are called as secondary consumers. So please note it down. The small consumers, the small carnivores, which feed on herbivores. Herbivores also is to called as what? Anybody? Elamati? Herbivores also is to called as
Primary consumer.
primary consumers. Primary consumers, they are called, what we used to call? Secondary consumers. So, examples we can make what? Frog, lizard, size is small, that's all you can see. Bird, kingfisher bird, and as well as the small fox, etc. We can say all are secondary consumers. So now if we take large carnivores, or we used to say top carnivores, also we can call it as top carnivores. So which feed upon the small carnivores are terrestrial consumers. That is what means they will eat this. Like for example, if we'll take lion, tiger, and like you can take vultures, these all will eat these smalls. Suppose if we'll take you can take frog will eat the primary consumers, like directly primary consumers who will eat the plants. And the frog is eaten by whom, guys? Frog is eaten by whom? Frog is eaten by snakes. Yes or no? So that is what we used to call as terrestrial consumers are large consumer carnivores which will eat the secondary consumers. That is what we used to call as terrestrial consumers. So if you take lion, tiger, big birds like vultures and all, they all will eat, including the human beings. We are all, you can make it here. So we will come some of the terrestrial consumers we can take. So, and if it comes to the human, they will be under a primary, they will be under a secondary, they will be under a terrestrial consumers, depending on the food which they will eat. Because some people are vegetarians, some people are non-vegetarians, you might be noticing. Some people are both, depend upon the situation they will eat. So that is why we cannot say like human beings, they will come under primary, secondary, and as well as terrestrial. Now, what is the second one? First one is called as small carnivores. So they are called as secondary consumers. Now, if you take a large, or we can say the top, the large carnivores, or we can say top carnivores, which feed upon the small carnivores. Small carnivores are called tertiary consumers. So examples we can make. So what is the examples? You can make lion, tiger, and some big birds like vultures, birds of prey, such as hawk, you can make. They all are called as terrestrial consumers. So they will eat like a large size of carnivores we used to call as terrestrial consumers, and small size of carnivores we used to call as secondary consumers. So now, if we take here, herbivores only will eat plant products and plants. That is why we used to call it as primary consumers. And some small carnivores will eat the primary consumers. That is why we used to call it as secondary consumers. And little bit bigger carnivores, they will eat these secondary consumers, and as well as the big organisms of herbivores also. So that is why they are called as tertiary consumers. So now if you take here, like a man. So based upon the situation, suppose Sunday, non-veg, Monday, so this puja, that puja, we will eat only leaves or something. Some days fasting. Some days we will eat only special. Some days only fish. Some days only chicken, mutton, whatever it is. So depend upon the situation, our food habits keep on changing. Is it yes or no, guys? Please respond. So based upon the day and based upon the time, the food which we are consuming, keep on changes. That is why it is depends on the food or the food habit which they eat, which they likes. So keep on changes. That is why we can say, like the human beings, particularly what we used to call, guys. So human beings will come under all the three categories. One is they are the primary consumers, and as well as they are the secondary consumers, and as well as they are the tertiary consumers. So because based upon their food habit, it is keep on changes. Understand, Tarani, Elamati? So now if you notice it, so these kind of animals, that is what us like human beings, we can say, their food habits, they will come under all the primary, secondary, and tertiary. Like these animals, we used to call it as omnivores or omnivores, whatever it is. So these animals, for example, you might be having a dog in your home, most of you. See, if you'll keep a sambar plus rice, it will eat. If you'll keep a non-veg bones and all, it will eat. Whatever you can serve, it will definitely. Even curd rice, it will eat. It will eat only purely non-veg. So that is what we can say. Even dog is also a omnivore because it will eat both plant food and as well as meat. So those animals which they will eat both plants and as well as what, guys? Plants and as well as animals. That is what we used to call as omnivores. So now if you take which they will eat the plants and as well as animals, we used to call it as omnivores. So the omnivores, they will eat the plant food and as well as the meat or flesh of other animals. So they used to call it as omnivores. So now let me see who will say the examples of omnivores. Anybody? Please let me know what is the examples you know. So what is the examples of omnivores? First of all, you have to take what? A man, or we are, the human beings is the first example of omnivores. Next one, what I told you, dog is the omnivores. Next one, have you seen a bird called as crow in our surroundings? Crow. Please respond. Bhumiga, Varshini, crow. Crow will eat both non-veg and veg or not? Please respond. Next, same way if you take a sparrow, you can take bear. Next, myna, understanding, and even ant you can see, ant, and as well as one more thing which I want to say you, hen, chicken you can see, hen or chicken, whatever it is. So they will also will eat both. Even most of the birds, they are what? They are omnivores only. They will eat flesh and as well as the fruits and everything. So that is what we used to say. They are depending on. Suppose if we'll take eagle only non-vegetarian. So it will come under Humra. It will come under Krutiga. It will come under only carnivores. But if we'll take crow, if we'll take a small other birds like myna and all, they will eat everything, both plants based and as well as animal based. So that is what we used to call it as carnivores. So for example, ourselves is a omnivorous animals because we will eat both plant food. We will eat grains, we will eat rice, we will eat pulses, we will eat vegetables, fruits, etc., etc. Same way we will eat what? Animals such as goat, chicken, fish, understanding, whatever it is, mutton or other, etc., etc. All the animals, even including the snakes also people are eating, even bats also eating. So whatever it is, birds, everything. So that is why we used to call it as omnivorous animals. So now we will describe, this is what we used to call it as what is omnivorous, what is carnivorous, and as well as what is herbivorous. So now we'll describe another type of producers and consumers which are extremely small. So that is what we used to call as planktons. This is very, very important. So this planktons means, you might be notice it, which are present on like a small greenish color surface I will show you the pictures also. So that is what we are going to discuss now. So that is only ways to called as a small producers which are present not like a plants, which are a type of producers and as well as consumers extremely small, extremely small. So they are only called as what we used to call planktons. Understand? So now we will study about these planktons. So this both will come as small producers and as well as what guys and consumers. So now let us see what is this small consumers and as well as producers. I will show you the picture and you people can understand. So now how many of you seen a green color layer is floating on the surface of water? Please let me know. Have you seen it? Anybody? A green color layer is floating on the surface of water. Please speak.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So that is only, so green color layer like algae we used to say. So algae is a what? A producer or consumer? Anybody? Algae is the producer or consumer? Please respond. Algae is the producer or consumer? That is not my question. So it is in green color pigment. So that what it is having, what we used to call this one? So it is the producer because it can do the photosynthesis reaction and it will be start sustaining its own. So that is what we used to call as understanding. So these are the small kind of producer. This is what you might be notice it here. Are you able to see guys? Please respond. So this is what we used to see a producer, small producer, which will sustain by its own by process of photosynthesis. So this every organism, here you are seeing some organisms extremely small. Here some organism, green color one floating. So this both we used to called as what guys? Both we used to called as what? We used to called as planktons. Understand? Padmavarshini, Sutir. Now these planktons, we are going to classifying into two categories. This is a very, very important one. So that is only phytoplanktons. One is what guys? Phytoplanktons and another one we used to called as zooplanktons. So please all of you note it down. Now I will say you try to understand. So the pictures itself is representing. So if you'll see planktons means what? They are very, very minute or microscopic organisms. They are freely floating on the surface of water or pond or lake or river or ocean, whatever it is. So that is what we used to call as planktons. So now these planktons are two types. One is what? Phytoplanktons and another one is what? Zooplanktons. Now let us come to the phytoplanktons means. By this time you can understand phytoplanktons means in the sense of what? The microscopic aquatic plants. Understanding everybody? So small, that is what? Microscopic aquatic plants, so which can make their own food. That is what we used to call as phytoplanktons. So which can float on the surface of water. They are called as phytoplanktons. So they will freely floating on surface of the water. So that is why we used to say the example of this phytoplanktons is what it is guys? We can say alga or algae, whatever it is. So this one, very, very small aquatic plant, which is always freely floating on the surface of water. So that is what we used to call as phytoplanktons. So now if we take here, these phytoplanktons, they will synthesize their own food by which process, Ra? By which process? By photosynthesis. Do you understand everyone? So that is you need to remember. So they will make their own food by the process called as photosynthesis. So that is why these are also used to called as primary producers. Understanding? Or else we used to not primary, we used to say producers. Prima, Arvind, please respond. That is. So now the same way if it comes to here, which will float on the surface, microscopic aquatic plants, which will freely floating. That is you have to remember. Freely floating is called as phytoplanktons. Now if it comes to the zooplanktons, These microscopic aquatic animals freely floating on water. Understand, this is aquatic plants and this is what, guys? Aquatic animals freely floating on water is called as zooplanktons. So if you take here, they are